They thought he didn't belong there. They looked him up and down, at his brown skin, his neatly braided locks, his calm but commanding presence, and made an assumption they'd regret for the rest of their careers. It was supposed to be just another routine hearing in Courtroom 3B of the Preston County Courthouse, a place where power wore expensive suits and justice often turned a blind eye to color. But when Jamal Rivers walked into that courtroom, he wasn't just walking in as a black man, he was walking in as a brilliant civil rights attorney with a mission, and the courtroom had no idea what storm was coming. The bailiff didn't see credentials. He saw skin. And without hesitation, he marched up to Jamal with puffed-up bravado, planting himself between the door and the man who'd earned his right to be there 10 times over. Court observers aren't allowed past this point, the bailiff barked, not even asking for ID. Jamal, who'd dealt with worse at Harvard Law, smiled politely and pulled out his bar card, extending it calmly. I'm not here to observe. I'm representing the plaintiff, sir. But the man didn't even look at the card. Instead, he leaned in closer, sneering. You need to step back or I'll have you escorted out. A few lawyers standing nearby chuckled. The court clerk glanced over but said nothing. It was the kind of quiet conspiracy that spoke volumes. They all assumed the same thing. Not because Jamal looked unprofessional, not because he did anything wrong, but because to them, a black man in a courtroom was more likely a defendant than counsel. Jamal's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. He'd faced racism in Ivy League halls, he'd faced it in law firms and boardrooms. But what they didn't know was that he had come prepared, for the courtroom, for the case, and for every microaggression they would throw his way. He opened his mouth to speak again, but before he could, the door to the judge's chamber opened and out stepped Judge Carolyn Whitmore, a stern middle-aged white woman known for her rigid formality and icy temperament. Her eyes swept the room with precision. The bailiff straightened up and stepped aside for her, but not before motioning to Jamal with a tilt of his head. This one's trying to pass himself off as an attorney, he muttered. Judge Whitmore's eyes locked on Jamal's. There was a flicker of recognition, but not from respect. No, her lip curled slightly, and the first words out of her mouth were, Sir, you're not authorized to be here. Leave now or I'll hold you in contempt. A hush fell over the courtroom. Jamal blinked slowly, the weight of injustice pressing on his shoulders. Still, he remained calm, raising his voice slightly so all could hear. Your Honor, I'm Jamal Rivers. I've been assigned as lead counsel in the Johnson v. Preston County School Board case. My filings are in your docket. The judge looked taken aback as if hearing that name triggered something, because Johnson v. Preston County was the case of the year. A civil rights lawsuit against the school board for decades of racial discrimination, one that had the whole town on edge. It was controversial. It was heated. And it was personal. Jamal was representing Mrs. Lillian Johnson, a retired black schoolteacher who had endured years of pay discrimination and professional sabotage. She had records. She had witnesses. And now she had Jamal. But apparently even that wasn't enough. I don't recall approving your appearance, the judge snapped, flipping through a folder on her bench. That's because my notice of appearance was filed yesterday after Mr. Dalton recused himself. You signed the approval electronically. Jamal pulled a hard copy from his briefcase and handed it to the clerk. There was a long silence as the clerk took it to the judge. She scanned the document, her face tightening with every line. Then, with obvious reluctance, she muttered, Very well. The bailiff looked confused. So, he stays. He stays, she hissed, slamming her gavel once. But her eyes bore into Jamal like daggers. It was clear, this wouldn't be a fair trial. Not without a fight. The first hour of proceedings was icy. Every time Jamal stood to speak, he was interrupted. Every time he presented evidence, he was questioned more harshly than his white counterparts. And when he called his first witness, the courtroom door swung open, and in walked the defense attorney, none other than Preston County's favorite legal bulldog, Mr. Travis Hartley. White, arrogant, and ruthless, he strutted in like he owned the place, smirking the moment he saw Jamal. Well, Travis drawled. Didn't know they were letting interns argue now. The courtroom chuckled. Even the judge gave a thin, inappropriate smile. But Jamal didn't flinch. You're late, Mr. Hartley. The court started 10 minutes ago, he said calmly. Travis just shrugged. Wasn't sure it was worth my time. But now I see we're going to make this interesting. What followed was a brutal 2-hour back and forth, with Travis objecting at every turn and the judge sustaining almost all of them. Still, Jamal persisted. He questioned Mrs. Johnson with precision. Her testimony was heartbreaking. She told of teaching overcrowded classrooms while white teachers got newer books and smaller classes. Of being passed over for promotions repeatedly. Of her paychecks being docked for minor infractions while others went untouched. She cried. Jamal didn't interrupt. He simply handed her a tissue and let the silence speak volumes. Then he pulled out the most damning piece of evidence, a handwritten memo from the superintendent years ago that read, "Lillian's got too much pride. She's not the kind of face we want representing the district." The courtroom gasped. The memo had been buried, but Jamal had found it during discovery. Travis jumped to his feet. Objection. This was never presented to the defense. It's in the exhibits folder marked 14C. You've had it for 3 weeks, Jamal responded coolly. Judge Whitmore narrowed her eyes. Overruled. Proceed. For a moment, it looked like the tide was turning. The jury shifted uncomfortably. The court reporter looked shaken. Even the clerk avoided eye contact. But that's when the sabotage began. As Jamal prepared to introduce his next witness, a former school board employee who was ready to confirm a culture of racism, something unexpected happened. The courtroom lights flickered. A recess was suddenly called. Jamal was asked to leave the courtroom for a private discussion between the judge and opposing counsel. When he returned, his witness was gone. He had a family emergency, Travis said, grinning. Jamal knew it was a lie. He knew that witness had been threatened or paid off. He'd seen it before. But the judge accepted the excuse and moved on. Then she dropped the bombshell. Mr. Rivers, I have serious concerns about your conduct in this courtroom, she said loudly. Your aggressive tone, your repeated challenges, your borderline disrespect. It all violates courtroom decorum. Jamal froze. Your Honor, I have done nothing but follow proper procedure. Enough, she shouted. One more incident and I will hold you in contempt. The entire courtroom buzzed. Reporters scribbled notes. Travis smirked, leaning back in his chair like he was already celebrating. But Jamal stood his ground. I'm not afraid to be held in contempt, he said quietly but clearly. If defending truth and justice in this courtroom is a crime, then by all means, lock me up. Judge Whitmore's face went red. That's it. Bailiff, remove Mr. Rivers from this courtroom. There was an audible gasp. The courtroom exploded in whispers. Jamal stood still as 2 bailiffs approached him, gripping his arms, escorting him toward the door. Cameras flashed. The jury looked stunned. Mrs. Johnson cried out, "You can't do this. He's our lawyer." And as Jamal was shoved out into the hallway, he turned to look back one last time, then locked eyes with the judge, who was now visibly rattled. But just as the door slammed shut behind him, his phone buzzed. A message popped up. It was from his law partner. And it read, "Get ready. The judge is about to be exposed on national television. You were right, she's on the school board payroll." CNN just picked it up. The whole world's watching now. Jamal stood in the hallway, heart pounding but eyes steady. The heavy courtroom door closed behind him like a slap to the face. His chest rose and fell as murmurs from the inside bled through the walls. Chaos, disbelief, and injustice all blending together like a slow-burning fire. He glanced down at his phone, reading the message again. Get ready. The judge is about to be exposed on national television. You were right, she's on the school board payroll. CNN just picked it up. The whole world's watching now. For a brief second, he allowed a smirk to curve the corner of his lips, not out of arrogance, but because truth had finally clawed its way through the lies. He turned toward the corridor, walking with quiet fury past startled spectators, murmuring clerks and gaping officers. His phone buzzed again. This time it was from Olivia Chin, his law partner and one of the fiercest investigative minds in the business. She had dug up the financial disclosures that exposed a backdoor funnel from the Preston County School Board to a consulting firm, partially owned by Judge Whitmore's husband. Money laundering, judicial bias, racketeering, layer after layer of filth buried beneath the town's illusion of order. Jamal answered the call. Is it solid? Olivia's voice was razor-sharp. Solid as concrete. I've already sent the documents to the Judicial Conduct Board, and 3 major outlets are running the story. By tonight, this courthouse will be on fire, figuratively. Perfect timing, Jamal said, jaw tightening. They just threw me out like trash. Let them have their moment. It's about to boomerang hard. Did we confirm the clerk's involvement? Yes, Olivia said. The court clerk, Denise Hargrove, altered docket entries. We got screenshots of 2 versions. One before and one after they tried to suppress your witness list. It's organized corruption. Jamal closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. And the missing witness? Terrence Bell, she said. That's the worst part. He didn't disappear willingly. His sister called us crying. He was arrested this morning on a bogus traffic violation and hasn't been allowed to post bail. They're holding him at county lockup. Jamal inhaled slowly, the rage burning hotter. They were playing dirty. But this was no longer just about one teacher's lawsuit. This was about dismantling a corrupt system that had operated in the shadows for far too long. He turned back toward the courtroom door, ready to demand re-entry, when a pair of security officers approached. Sir, we've been instructed to escort you off the premises, one said with a neutral tone that barely masked the discomfort in his eyes. By whose orders? Jamal asked, already knowing the answer. Judge Whitmore, the officer said, shifting uncomfortably. She says you're a disruption and a threat to the integrity of the court. Jamal nearly laughed. A threat to her integrity, maybe, he thought. You know this is unlawful, he said quietly. And you'll both be in my deposition later this week if you follow through with it. One of the officers hesitated. Sir, no, Jamal said firmly, his voice hardening. Do your job. Escort me out. Let the cameras see this. Let the world see a black civil rights lawyer get thrown out of court for doing his job while a corrupt judge protects racists. That made the younger officer flinch. The other one glanced over Jamal's shoulder and froze. Jamal turned and saw the news crew walking into the building. Local Channel 7. Then CNN. Cameras, microphones, boom poles, and reporters all storming the courthouse. Word had already spread. Olivia wasn't playing. There he is, one of the reporters shouted. Mr. Rivers. Is it true you were ejected from the courtroom for uncovering judicial corruption? Jamal adjusted his tie, stepped forward, and faced the flashing lights. It's true, he said boldly. And this isn't just about me, it's about decades of injustice being protected by those who wear robes and hide behind procedure. Judge Carolyn Whitmore is compromised, and the people of Preston County deserve better. We have evidence. We have witnesses. And we won't stop until justice is served. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Jamal gave a calm, clear soundbite for each. And just as he finished, Olivia texted again. Check your email. We just uploaded the full report and the wire transfers. Jamal clicked the file. Dozens of pages, dates, account numbers, signatures. It was irrefutable. But as he turned to go back inside with the momentum of justice at his back, the court-marshal appeared with a folded paper. Mr. Rivers, you've been barred from entering any Preston County courtroom until further notice, pending a conduct review. Jamal unfolded the paper slowly. It was a bogus administrative order, signed in haste and without legal standing, but enough to scare lesser men. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. She's doubling down, Olivia said over the phone. That's panic mode. But listen, don't worry about it. There's a higher judge assigned to review the motion for injunction. We can file an emergency appeal within the hour. Already ahead of you, Jamal said, walking out into the sunlight where the news vans lined the streets like soldiers ready for war. I'm going straight to federal district court. Olivia's voice softened. This is bigger than we thought, Jamal. They weren't just protecting a school board. There are police officers, real estate developers, and even the mayor involved in this payoff circle. This case could bring them all down. Then we go all the way, Jamal said. All of them. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, panic was quietly blooming behind closed doors. Judge Whitmore sat pale and stiff at the bench while whispers circled her like flies. The court clerk had disappeared. Her phone was vibrating nonstop. Her assistant whispered urgently in her ear, "Your husband's consulting firm is trending online." The local paper just leaked the wire transfers. Her face lost all color. Across the courtroom, Travis Hartley looked furious as he scanned his phone, lips pressed into a thin white line. He stood up and requested a sidebar. "Your Honor," he whispered harshly, "we have a situation. We need to adjourn. If this keeps going, we're all going down." "You think I don't know that?" she snapped under her breath. You were supposed to keep this under control. This wasn't part of the deal, he hissed. You were supposed to keep him out of this courtroom permanently. She stared at him with cold fire. Then make sure he doesn't come back. But it was too late. Outside the courthouse, Jamal was already surrounded by a crowd of supporters, activists, students, former clients, and even some local lawyers who had stayed silent for too long but could no longer deny the truth. A chant began to rise. Let him in. Let him in. Let him in. And standing at the top of the courthouse steps, Jamal raised one hand and silenced the crowd. Today is not just about me, he shouted. This is about dismantling a system that punishes truth-tellers and protects power. We are filing for an emergency injunction in federal court. I will represent my client. And I promise you, justice is not optional. It's overdue. He turned and walked down the steps with purpose. Cameras followed. A young law student ran up beside him. Mr. Rivers, she said breathlessly. I go to Preston Law School. I've been watching everything. I want to help. Please, put me to work. Jamal looked at her and nodded. What's your name? Deja. Deja Morris. All right, Deja. You're on research. Get me everything on Whitmore's prior rulings involving the school board. I want patterns, trends, conflicts of interest, anything suspicious. On it, she said, running off. That's when Jamal's phone rang again. It was Terrence Bell's sister. She was crying. Mr. Rivers, they transferred him. They said it was a security precaution, but they won't tell me where. I think they're trying to make him disappear. Jamal's stomach dropped. Stay calm, he said. Do you still have his last location? Yes, they took him from county lockup an hour ago. But I followed the van. I think they brought him to an old building near Route 17. I'm going there now, Jamal said. Olivia's voice broke in. Wait, Jamal, don't go alone. This could be dangerous. Then meet me there, he said. Because if they're willing to go this far, we need to catch them in the act. We'll film everything. Live stream it if we have to. Olivia agreed. They both headed out from different directions. By the time Jamal pulled up near the abandoned building off Route 17, it was dusk. The air was heavy. The silence around the building felt unnatural. He left his car running, slowly stepping toward the entrance, phone recording in hand. The door creaked open. He stepped inside. Darkness. A strange humming noise. Then suddenly voices. Muffled. Frantic. He followed the sound toward the back. And then he saw him. Terrence Bell, bound to a chair, bruised, dazed, but alive. And standing in front of him, two men in security uniforms. One of them was the court bailiff. Hey! Jamal shouted. The men turned, eyes wide. The bailiff cursed and reached for something on his belt, but Jamal wasn't alone. A spotlight hit the window. Olivia stepped into view with a camera crew and two off-duty black officers she'd convinced to come along. Drop your weapons and step back, she ordered. This is all being recorded. The men hesitated, then bolted out the side exit. One officer chased after them. Jamal ran to Terrence. You're safe now, he said. We got you. Terrence looked up through swollen eyes. They said if I talked they'd bury me. Said the judge would protect them. She won't anymore, Jamal promised. She's about to go down. But as they carried Terrence outside, headlights suddenly flooded the parking lot. 4 black SUVs pulled up, tinted windows rolling down. A familiar face stepped out, someone Jamal hadn't seen in years. It was his old law mentor, Gregory Price, a retired federal judge, and one of the most respected black legal minds in the country. Jamal, Gregory said grimly, we need to talk. This goes deeper than you think. Whitmore's just a pawn. A pawn for who? Jamal asked. You're not just dealing with a corrupt county court anymore, Gregory said, voice heavy. You just stepped into a billion-dollar conspiracy tied to private prisons, state funding, and education contracts. And they know your name now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths. Jamal stared at Gregory Price as the truth settled like a weight on his chest, the kind of weight that squeezed out illusion and demanded clarity, the kind of weight that told him this wasn't just about a judge with dirty hands or a school board protecting racism, this was systemic, engineered, and far-reaching. Gregory stepped forward, his eyes scanning the perimeter as if they were being watched, and maybe they were. I tried to stay out of this, the elder said, his voice laced with regret. I thought retirement would give me peace. But when I saw your name attached to this case, I knew they'd come after you hard. You have no idea what you've just uncovered, Jamal." Olivia stepped beside Jamal, her camera crew frozen behind her, trying to comprehend the weight of what was being said. "What exactly are we looking at here?" she asked. Gregory motioned toward his SUV, opened the back door, and handed Jamal a thick black folder stamped confidential in faded red ink. "That's a federal audit," he said. "One that never saw the light of day. It details how 3 counties in this state, including Preston, have been manipulating school suspension rates for black students. To funnel more of them into alternative school programs owned by a private company called Delcor Systems. Guess who sits on Delcor's board?" Jamal's stomach turned. "Judge Whitmore's husband," Olivia whispered, already connecting the dots. Gregory nodded. "And the mayor. And the former sheriff. The same sheriff who once said your client, Mr. Bell, was a danger to his kind. So they suspended black kids," Jamal said slowly, "pushed them into private programs, and the programs made money off it?" "More than money," Gregory said. "Delcor gets state funding for every student enrolled. The more students they classify as at risk, the bigger the checks. It's legalized trafficking through bureaucracy. And they targeted poor black families with no resources to fight back. Terrence Bell's testimony would have exposed it all." Jamal rubbed his hands over his face. The deeper he went, the worse it got. "So what now?" he asked. "Now?" Gregory's eyes hardened. "Now we go nuclear. We take this federal." But before they could speak further, Olivia's phone rang. It was Deja Morris, the law student. Her voice was frantic. "Miss Chin, you guys need to get back to the city courthouse, now." "What? What happened?" Olivia asked. "They've called an emergency hearing," Deja said breathlessly. "They're about to strip Mr. Rivers' license. Judge Whitmore filed a motion claiming he falsified documents and threatened a court officer. There's a new judge assigned, Judge Franklin, and they're rushing it through before the media can catch up." "They're trying to disbar me," Jamal said, stunned but not surprised. Olivia clenched her fists. "They're desperate." "That's good," Gregory said. "Desperate people make mistakes." "We have to get there," Jamal said, already turning to his car. "If they pull my license, I won't even be able to represent Terrence, let alone take this federal." "They can't stop you with lies," Olivia said. "We have evidence. Video. Witnesses. The truth is on our side." "Truth needs a voice," Jamal replied, voice tight. "And they're trying to silence mine." They raced back to Preston County. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, the mood had shifted from tense to volatile. Judge Franklin sat tall, silver-haired and severe, with a reputation for cold impartiality, but something about the way he kept glancing toward the prosecution's bench told Deja everything she needed to know. She stood quietly in the back of the room, clutching her notepad as Hartley strutted across the floor, feeding the court exaggerated claims about Jamal threatening court personnel, tampering with evidence and organizing a media stunt to embarrass the judiciary. "He turned this courtroom into a circus," Hartley said. "He's not a lawyer, Your Honor. He's a provocateur. And I respectfully request that this court move to suspend his license pending a full disciplinary hearing." Judge Franklin nodded slowly. "Do you have any material evidence of these allegations?" "I have sworn statements from 2 officers and the court clerk," Hartley replied smoothly. "And video footage taken out of context." Deja couldn't take it anymore. She stood up. "Your Honor, if I may, sit down," Franklin barked. "You are not a party to these proceedings." "I'm a witness," she said, trembling but firm. "And I have proof that the court clerk altered docket entries and that Mr. Rivers is being targeted for exposing corruption." Franklin's gaze narrowed. "That's a serious accusation, young lady." "So is attempting to disbar an innocent man to cover up a scandal," she shot back. That's when the doors burst open. Jamal entered, calm and composed, flanked by Olivia and Gregory. The courtroom gasped. Reporters flooded in behind them, cameras raised. "Your Honor," Jamal said firmly, "I demand the right to speak in my defense." "You are under investigation," Franklin said sharply. "You have no standing here." "Then let me show you what I brought," Jamal said, holding up a USB drive. "Wire transfers. Judicial conflicts of interest. and video evidence of a witness being unlawfully detained and assaulted by officers connected to this court. Franklin froze. The air shifted. Hartley's face drained of color. "You submit those documents," Franklin said slowly, "and I will recess to review them. But know this, Mr. Rivers, if you are lying there will be consequences." "I'm counting on that," Jamal said, handing the drive to the bailiff. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Franklin called for a 1-hour recess. Outside the crowd had grown. Supporters held signs, "Justice for Terrence. We stand with Jamal. End judicial racism." Gregory turned to Jamal. "You're forcing them into the light. Now you just have to survive what happens next." Olivia got another call, this time from an anonymous tip line she'd set up. She answered. A distorted voice said, "Check the mayor's calendar from 2 months ago. Private meeting with Delcor executives. Location, Whitmore's Lake House." "Who is this?" she asked, but the line went dead. "They're trying to run," she told Jamal. "We have to get to that lake house. There might be physical records. Contracts. Notes. We'll split up," Jamal said. "You and Gregory go there. I'll handle the courtroom." "You sure?" Olivia asked. "They're throwing everything at you now." "Let them," Jamal said. "Because I'm not going down without dragging their lies into the sunlight." 1 hour later, Judge Franklin returned to a packed courtroom. "Having reviewed the submitted materials, I find cause to delay any disciplinary motion against Mr. Rivers until a full federal investigation is concluded. Furthermore, I am ordering an independent inquiry into the conduct of Judge Whitmore, Attorney Hartley, and the Preston County Clerk's office." Gasp. Cries. Reporters dashed for the exits. Hartley began to protest, but Franklin slammed his gavel. "Silence. Mr. Rivers, you may resume representation of your client, and the trial will recommence tomorrow." Jamal stood slowly and the courtroom erupted in applause. But it wasn't over. That night Olivia and Gregory arrived at the lake house. Quiet, too quiet. They found the place abandoned but not empty. Olivia picked the lock and stepped inside. The air smelled of bleach. "They've been here," she said, trying to cover their tracks. They searched the study, the kitchen, the basement. Then they found it, an old locked file cabinet tucked behind a false wall in the guest room closet. Gregory forced it open with a crowbar. Inside, dozens of folders. Names. Payouts. Letters from state officials. Delcor contracts. Meeting minutes. And photos. One of them made Olivia freeze. It showed a young black boy handcuffed at a school desk, flanked by 2 white officers. The photo was labeled, "Prototype Discipline Program, South Ridge Middle, Pilot 1. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered. This was never just about money. They were experimenting on these kids. Gregory's voice was low. "We need to leak this. All of it. Before they silence us too." Olivia nodded. "I'll send everything to the Washington Post tonight." Back in town, Jamal sat in his office when he got the next blow. A text from Deja. "Travis Hartley just filed a motion to move the trial to a private arbitration board, Delcor funded. No jury. No press." Jamal's jaw clenched. They were trying to hide the final act. But he was done playing defense. He stood up, grabbed his files, and walked toward the courthouse once more. But as he reached the stairwell, he heard it. Footsteps. Quick. Purposeful. Then pain. A sharp crack behind his ear. Darkness swallowed him. And Jamal Rivers collapsed to the floor as a shadow disappeared into the darkness, leaving only his briefcase behind. Pain throbbed through Jamal's skull like a war drum echoing inside a canyon as he slowly opened his eyes to dim, flickering light. His wrists were tied, his back slouched against cold concrete. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust, and when they did, he realized he was in an old maintenance room, likely deep inside the courthouse basement. There were no windows, only a small ventilation duct humming above and a rusted metal door with no knob from his side. He groaned, struggling against the cords that bound him, his mind racing to piece together what had happened. The last thing he remembered was walking down the stairwell to prepare for the next day's hearing, then a sudden blow, and now this. As he tested the bonds, he realized whoever did this was no amateur. They'd tied him with professional-grade zip ties and removed his phone, wallet, even his shoes. But they made one mistake: they left his briefcase. It lay in the corner, likely overlooked. He dragged himself toward it, inch by inch, grit biting into his palms, blood trickling from a gash on his temple. When he finally reached the case, he maneuvered it open and sighed with relief. It was still intact. His flash drives, evidence logs, and a spare burner phone were all untouched. He used the edge of a metal file inside the case to saw through the zip ties, the plastic cutting into his skin as he worked until, snap. Freedom. He snatched the phone, dialed Olivia. No signal. Underground. He needed to get out. Back in the city, chaos reigned. News had broken about Jamal's sudden disappearance. Olivia stood at a press conference flanked by Gregory Price and Deja Morris. Her voice trembled with fury. "This isn't just an attack on a lawyer," she declared, fire in her eyes. "It's an attack on truth, on justice, and on every black voice that dares speak out against corruption." Jamal Rivers was ready to expose a pipeline of racial exploitation tied to judges, school boards, and private corporations. And now he's missing. "We know who's behind this," Gregory added grimly. "Delcor Systems, Judge Whitmore, Attorney Hartley, and their entire circle of enablers. They're cornered, and they've resorted to violence." Reporters shouted questions. Olivia ignored them. She turned to Deja. "We need to find him before they silence him forever." Meanwhile, in that basement cell, Jamal had begun his escape. He used a piece of broken pipe to wedge open the vent. With every muscle screaming in pain, he pulled himself upward, crawling through dust-choked darkness. After nearly 20 agonizing minutes, he emerged in an old archive room above the courthouse's main level. He stumbled out, bleeding, disoriented, but alive. And as he reached the courthouse lobby, all eyes turned. Gas. Cries. Phones out. Jamal Rivers was back from the dead. A bailiff rushed to help. Paramedics arrived minutes later. But Jamal refused to be taken to a hospital until he made one thing clear. "I'm ready to finish this trial," he said, eyes fierce. "No more delays. No more hiding." The courtroom filled like a stadium. Reporters, lawyers, activists. The tension crackled like lightning in a storm. Judge Franklin presided, stoic but unsettled. "Mr. Rivers," he said, peering down, "we are grateful for your safety. Do you wish to proceed despite your injuries?" "I do, Your Honor," Jamal said. "The people deserve answers. Terrence Bell deserves justice. And I will not rest until it's done." Hartley stood with a fake smile. "Your Honor, I'd like to formally request a change of venue and to dismiss all evidence brought by Mr. Rivers due to his, clearly unstable, condition." The crowd booed. Franklin raised a hand. "Request denied. Mr. Rivers, you may proceed." Jamal stepped forward, bandaged but blazing with clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "what you're about to see isn't just a case about a wrongfully suspended black student. It's a blueprint of institutional corruption, a map of modern-day exploitation, and a playbook that must be destroyed, now." He played the first video, Terrence Bell's interview, detailing how administrators targeted him, fabricated evidence, and ignored his pleas. Then the footage from Deja showing Hartley's threats and collusion with court staff. Then came the kicker, Olivia's bombshell, photos and documents recovered from the judge's lake house. The photos of restrained black students. The payout schedules. The internal memos referring to students as units. The courtroom was in stunned silence. A juror wept. A court clerk slipped out, clearly shaken. And then Jamal dropped the final blow. "Your Honor," he said, "the following audio file contains a recorded phone call between Judge Whitmore and a Delcor executive discussing their strategy to neutralize this case. It was recovered by a whistleblower and verified by forensic experts." The courtroom erupted as the audio played. Whitmore's voice was unmistakable. "Rivers is a problem. If we don't get him out of the picture, Delcor's funding will take a hit. Handle it quietly." Franklin turned pale. "Court is adjourned," he barked. "A federal investigation is now officially underway." Whitmore was nowhere to be found. Olivia leaned over to Jamal. "She ran." "She won't get far," he said. "This is too big now. Too loud. The country's watching." That evening, protests surged outside City Hall. "Free Terrence Bell. Disbar Hartley. Jail corrupt judges." Olivia's news report went viral. Deja was offered an internship with the ACLU. Gregory was invited to speak at Columbia Law. Jamal? He walked into the detention center that night and stood face to face with Terrence Bell. The boy looked up, eyes full of disbelief. "Mr. Rivers? You're coming home, son," Jamal said. "We won." The two embraced, a tidal wave of relief between them. But just as Jamal left the building, his phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered. A voice, low, southern calm, came through. "You think you're done? That was just the front. Delcor's got friends higher up than you can imagine." The next phase already started. Jamal froze. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "You wanted to fight giants, Rivers? Welcome to the war." The line went dead. Olivia approached, reading his face. "What is it?" Jamal looked to the skyline, the courthouse lit behind them. "They're not done. Someone bigger is pulling the strings. We just took out a pawn." Olivia nodded. "Then we go after the king." Jamal looked at the flash drive in his hand, labeled Project Apex. He hadn't opened that file yet. Something told him it wasn't about students, but about something even more sinister. He glanced at Olivia. "We need to see what's on this drive. Tonight." But as they opened the folder on Olivia's laptop, the screen glitched. A virus warning popped up. Then the entire file deleted itself. "What the?" Olivia gasped. "Encrypted kill switch. Somebody knew we'd get this." Then her phone buzzed. An anonymous message. "If you don't stop digging, next time we won't miss." Jamal stared at it. His face hardened. Then they just gave us a reason to dig even deeper. The following morning broke with a red sun rising over Preston County, casting an eerie glow across the city, still reeling from the legal earthquake Jamal Rivers had triggered. But while the streets buzzed with protesters demanding sweeping justice, Jamal sat in silence at his desk, staring at a shattered laptop screen. The Project Apex file, the one they believed held the key to the higher powers behind Delcor systems, was gone, deleted before they could examine it. Whoever had placed the encrypted kill switch knew exactly what they were doing. But Jamal wasn't broken. If anything, it made him more determined. Olivia stepped into the room, her face pale but focused. "We traced the virus. It originated from an offshore server, Singapore. But the funding trail behind the firewall leads to an American holding company. Guess who sits on its board?" "Let me guess," Jamal said grimly. "A U.S. senator." Olivia nodded. "And not just any senator. Chair of the Education Appropriations Committee." Jamal exhaled sharply. "Of course. The corruption doesn't stop at judges or city officials. It goes all the way to federal funding channels. And they've been piloting discipline programs through Delcor," she said. "Using Preston County as a test bed. Project Apex wasn't just about kids, it was a framework for privatizing public discipline systems. They want to roll it out nationwide under the guise of school reform." Jamal stood. "Then we take this national." "They'll fight back harder," Olivia warned. "You could lose your license, your safety, your life." "And if we stay quiet?" Jamal asked. "How many more Terrence Bells will be erased?" Just then the door opened. Gregory Price entered, his expression grave. "They've issued a federal injunction. Delcor and their legal team are trying to suppress all media coverage. They're using the Espionage Act to classify Project Apex as a national security matter." "You've got to be kidding me," Olivia snapped. "They're labeling a corrupt education scheme as a security issue?" "They're scared," Jamal said. "Which means we're close." Gregory placed a file on the desk. "There's one more route. A congressional whistleblower hearing. You need to testify. Under oath. On camera. And you'd be exposing some very powerful people." "Set it up," Jamal said. "We're done playing defense." 2 weeks later, Jamal sat before the House Subcommittee on Education Oversight, televised nationally. Across from him sat senators, lobbyists, representatives of Delcor systems, faces tight with denial. Olivia sat behind him, flanked by Gregory, Deja, and Terrence Bell's mother, Ms. Bell, who clutched a photo of her son in his middle school uniform. Jamal adjusted the microphone, then looked into the eyes of the committee and the millions watching from home. "My name is Jamal Rivers," he began, his voice steady, "and I am a civil rights attorney who was wrongfully removed from a courtroom for defending a black child named Terrence Bell. In doing so, I uncovered a system designed to criminalize, exploit, and erase black youth for profit. I was beaten, silenced, and nearly disbarred for daring to speak the truth. But I am still here." He laid out everything. The forged suspensions. the secret contracts, the payout structures, the school-to-Delcor pipeline, the audio recordings, the offshore connections, the Project Apex plans. He held nothing back. The senators shifted uncomfortably. One interrupted. "Mr. Rivers, are you suggesting that this body has been complicit in criminal acts?" "I'm saying," Jamal replied, "that willful ignorance is not a defense. And silence in the face of evil is complicity." The room buzzed with tension. Olivia uploaded every piece of redacted evidence online during the hearing, sharing it with journalists across the globe. The truth couldn't be buried now. The fallout was immediate. Within 48 hours, Judge Whitmore was arrested at a private airstrip in Montana. Hartley's law license was suspended pending investigation. The mayor of Preston County resigned. 2 senators connected to Delcor Holdings were subpoenaed by a federal grand jury. Delcor Systems stock plummeted 72% in 3 days. But perhaps the most powerful moment came days later, when Jamal stood on the steps of the Preston courthouse, now surrounded by murals of Terrence Bell, quotes about justice, and banners that read, "Never again." "This isn't just a win for me," Jamal told the crowd gathered beneath the sunset. "It's a win for every voice they tried to silence. For every student who was told they were too angry, too disruptive, too black to belong. Let this courthouse never forget who it belongs to, the people." Olivia approached, tears in her eyes. "We did it." "No," Jamal said. "They did it. The truth did it." That evening, Terrence Bell returned to school. Apologies were issued. Lawsuits were filed. Policies were rewritten. Preston County's new school superintendent, a black woman named Dr. Imani Keys, repealed every punitive measure enacted under Delcor's system. But the war wasn't over. One night, Jamal sat alone in his office, staring at the final envelope Gregory had given him before retiring for good. Inside, a list of 10 other counties with nearly identical student discipline trends. And at the bottom, a handwritten note: "They thought Preston was the end. It's just the beginning. GP." Jamal looked out the window at the city skyline. He reached for his phone. "Olivia," he said, "are you ready to do this again?" Her voice came through firm, unflinching. "Always. The end. The fight for justice doesn't end when the courtroom closes or when the guilty are exposed. It begins when truth meets courage. In a system built to silence, the loudest power is a voice that refuses to back down." Jamal Rivers proved that no matter how deeply injustice is rooted, one person with truth, integrity, and unbreakable resolve can start a revolution. Stand tall. Speak truth. Because silence protects the oppressor, and justice belongs to the bold. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths.